Welcome to the Courage to Change with Karen podcast, the place where we get real about addiction recovery and celebrate the victories against struggle. I'm Karen Gardenier, your navigator on this journey of healing, committed to uplifting families touched by addiction. Together, let's unravel the intricate dance of mind, body, and spirit with compassion, tenacity, and steadfast commitment. Hi, this is Karen. Welcome to episode 20 of Courage to Change with Karen. Thanks for coming back. Please let me know if you're here. I feel sometimes like I'm alone in this gig, and I'd love to hear from you. So in the comments, even a thumbs up, send me something so I know you're there and listening. Please also, if you would, give this a like or a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to, and share it with a friend. I'd appreciate it. All right, today I'm going to read out of Courage to Change, page 138. Page 138, Courage to Change. When we talk of tomorrow, says a Chinese proverb, the gods laugh. They laugh, I believe, not because they find us ridiculous, but because they know the future is not predictable. Thus, we have no choice but to live one day at a time. I can make plans, and I cannot determine the results, no amount of scheming about... Here, let me start that over, okay? I can make plans. You know what? All of a sudden, my mind just took off on me. Just raced on me. Isn't that funny? I was reading, and it just zoop. So let me bring it back here with you. I can make plans, but I cannot determine the results. No amount of scheming about next week can control what will happen then. Circumstances will be different, and I myself will be different as well. I can further compress the focus of this slogan to address 1 hour at a time, or even 1 minute at a time. In such small increments, life begins to feel not only bearable, but precious. At any given moment, no matter what is going on, if I concentrate on being right here, right now, I know that I'm fine. Today's reminder. My worst fears about tomorrow need not affect this day. By letting them go, I am free to grow. What bad habit can I change today? What fear can I face? What joy can I acknowledge? What good fortune, no matter how modest, can I celebrate? All I have is today. Let me make today the most fully alive day I have ever experienced. Boy, that was interesting. You know, just reading that, that first paragraph, it threw me into tomorrow. It just threw me into like fear and just reading that, I'm going to read it again. When we talk of tomorrow, says a Chinese proverb, the gods laugh. They laugh, I believe, not because they find us ridiculous, but because they know the future is not predictable. Thus, we have no choice but to live one day at a time. Well, that was interesting to me because I just jetted out. My mind took off on me, and, I had to pull it back. I have to remember today is really all there is. I listen to a lot of metaphysical, scientific, what would you call it? I don't know what the word is. I just got so flustered by doing that. I think of things in a very universal way. Let's just say that, in a very universal way. And so I've come to know that the now is all there is. This is it. What's happened in the past actually doesn't exist. Right? It's just my remembrance of it. It's in my mind, but it's actually not here right now. And the future's not here. It's in my mind. It hasn't happened yet. So it's what I'm projecting. It's really if you read any stuff by physicists, and it's very interesting. It's hard to get your head around because my life, when I look at it, seems like the total sum of my past and my future. And where I'm at right now, but that's not the truth. The truth is, it's just the now. Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this, but if you could think about that all we have is this moment. So right now I have fear, but nothing's wrong right now. Everything is just fine. I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you. I just read this reading. Everything is fine. But the fear of what's going to happen, and I love when it says right here, I cannot determine the results. No amount of scheming about next week can control what will happen then. The circumstances will be different, and I myself will be different as well. You see, I'm changing every minute. I'm going to be a different person when I finish this podcast with you, because I've spoken my truth. I've learned something by sharing. It's just so important that you share. That's why I encourage people to go to Al-Anon or Nar-Anon or Coda or whatever it is. If you're younger, and I do have younger listeners, go to Alateen. There's something about listening to someone, just sitting there. You can't interrupt. They have the floor. They're going to talk. It's not for very long, so you can usually pay attention. And then there's something about sharing. I think listening to other people is when I grow, because I can see it in them far better than I can see it myself. For instance, there was this girl I was helping. It wasn't in codependency. It was in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So I'm helping this girl, and she's brand new. And I had this experience myself when I went to treatment. So I really could see it very clearly, but she was, detoxing, and her mind was really starting to snap on her. It was trying to convince her to drink again. And she said to me, well, what about, if you can hear any snoring, that's my dog. He's sleeping, and he's in the room with me. But she said, what about Christmas? What am I going to do on Christmas? What am I going to do on New Year's Eve? I said, it's August. It's August. What are you worried about that for? Right. And it doesn't even exist. I create things in my mind. I think I know how things are going to turn out. And they usually turn out that way because I'm thinking that way. Right? Big revelation. So when I listen to someone else, I'm growing. When I talk, I'm healing. Like just talking to you today. The reason I pick subjects that I do, if you wonder why I bounce around, I always pick readings that you've probably already read. If you're following me with the book, they're always before the date that it falls on. Like today's the 30th, and I read the 17th of May. So I'll never jump ahead. But it's because I read it, and it really stuck with me. And I believe in like this universal consciousness. And that if you are somehow in my energy, on my vibrational whatever, you're probably going through the same thing too. That's why we were attracted to each other. So this, for me, is a big one. And I don't know why I can't get in my head that I can create what's going to happen. Just like I can look at the past, and I can actually change the past by rephrasing it, by just reframing the whole situation. I can look at something that happened to me. I've had a lot of things happen to me. Not the greatest things. I've got a really wild past, even in my childhood, with parents and step-parents and just crazy stuff, right? But if you hear me talk about it, I always talk about it in a good way, because I decided to take the good. And the rest I marked off as experience. Valuable experience so I can help someone else. Now, I know that's really hard. But you can look at your past, and you can either let it kill you, with resentment, guilt, remorse, and shame, or you can let it transform your life, right? And that's why I do what I do, to be honest. The reason I do this is not because I've lived this great life and I'm codependent free. I have all these healthy relationships and, I'm, let's just put it this way. I couldn't run for president. The reason I talk about what I talk about is because I have had unhealthy relationships. I have had failed relationships. I have done it wrong, right? And I've had other people do it wrong with me, and I've had to heal from that. So I have a ton of experience actually walking out of it. And that's why I share with you. It's just like my drinking and using, on my resume of drinking and using. I take that information and it could either define my life as being a drunk addict, loser, who failed at everything, just failed at life, couldn't live her own life. Or I can say, oh my God, I was so sick and I did all those things. I'm a drunk addict, alcoholic that failed at everything and drove her life, turned her life into a dumpster fire. And then I came out of it, right? So I can reframe the past because it's in my mind. They say that we don't even remember things the way they actually happened. I know that seems crazy because you're going to say, I was there. No, you were there, but your mind, because of the different interpretations you've heard about the event, the way you were made to feel about the event, it changes. Have you ever known someone? I have this friend, she's in her 80s. And every time she tells this story, it changes a little. When we're at dinner with friends, right, or family or whatever, and I, it's a holiday and I'm with her, and she'll share a story. I'm trying to think, there's one story, and every time she tells it, the number changes. Like it started that it was 2 things, and then the next time she told it, it was 4 things, and the next time she told it. Now recently, I think she said, oh, there was 25 incidences or something. And I looked at her spouse and I was like, oh my God, they rolled their eyes, because you remember it the way you're going to remember it. So you get to decide. And the same with my future. I can reframe my future. I can say, oh my gosh, I am so much fear about this, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. What if I imagined in my mind that it was going to turn out perfect? Right? Could that possibly happen? Yes, it could. Or is it going to be a disaster? If I think that, yeah, it's going to be a disaster, right? It's my thinking. And I think that's so hard to get your mind around because to me, everything seems so, it's like everything fit in a little box before I got to recovery. I was right. You're wrong. It's your fault. It's not my fault. I was adopted. I'm unwanted. I have abandonment issues. Everything fit in this box. And then I got to recovery and they challenged my box. Not a box at all, right? It's not a box at all. So I have to reframe everything. Because the way I was raised kind of set it up. They say by the time you're 7, you have it all set in your head. The way you're going to view the past and view the future and view yourself. And it's because you're around the people you're around. You're in the atmosphere you're in. And so, that it doesn't really mean anything, though. I mean, let's take, for example, if you grew up in the worst part of Detroit, right, just murder on the streets, gangbangers, horrible, but you grew up and you were successful, and we talked about your childhood, you probably would frame it very different than what we would, right? you probably reframe it and say, God, that neighborhood made me tough. I learned about family. My family was so important, my safety of my family. I learned how to work hard. I learned how to protect myself, right? Where someone else might say, you know what, I'm not even going to try. I grew up in a terrible neighborhood in Detroit where people get killed, and that's where I'm destined to stay, right? Or, on the other hand, you could take a really wealthy kid, I'm thinking of one in mind that I know of, and they have, talk about amazing life that they've been able to live because of their parents' success and the opportunities they were given, and everything they see is wrong, right? Their parents smothered them. They could never live up to their dad's expectations. They felt, jailed in by the father's popularity or celebrityism. Everything, they lived in such a phony world. He grew up in a plastic world, and then that's the way he framed it. So I think it's the person decides what they're going to do, what they're going to think, and I got to stay in the moment. I want to pretend like the future's already laid out and it's going to be this way and this is what's going to happen and I'm terrified. But I don't know. I got to stay in today. And I was just listening to something yesterday by Jim Rohn. I don't know if you know who Jim Rohn is, but if you look up his stuff on YouTube, Jim Rohn, Rohn. Amazing speaker. He was the mentor for Tony Robbins. So this guy was really something, and it's old stuff. It was 80s and 90s stuff, but it is so true. And yesterday he was talking about why we think, oh, someday I'm going to be rich and someday I'm going to be this and someday I'm going to be, all you have to do is be that right now. Just start being the person you want to be. And that will be the future. And then tomorrow, that will be your new past. That'll be how you were yesterday, right? So it's a heavy subject. I love it. I love the fact that you can narrow it down to 1 minute at a time. I got to tell you, there's nothing better than that. I have gone through some really crazy things with my child and things that I didn't think I could bear. Things I thought I was going to literally have a heart attack. I couldn't handle it. The emotions, what was happening in the moment, it was so bad that I just couldn't take it. And a gentleman that I knew was a mentor to me, he recently passed, but he said to me, you know what, Karen, stay in the moment. There's nothing you can't handle in the moment. And I thought, oh my God, he's right. I can do this. If I just stay right in this moment, I can handle it. And I did. I just stayed in the moment. And I kept doing that for a long, long time. I couldn't jet out into the future because I would have been in the hospital. I literally had no coping skills with what was going on. I don't think any parent does. It's difficult, these things that we're talking about here. And I'm not trying to make light of it. These are actual things that have saved my life and probably her life. Because if I was incapable and out of my mind, like I get overwhelmed by what could happen, what's going to happen, what I think is going to happen. I'm immobile. I'm useless to everyone around me. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be riddled in fear. I don't want to decide that, everything's going up in flames when it's not. Everything is just fine. And I don't know. It's just such a relief to me And I'm so happy that it's really just a one day at a time program. I mean, how insightful is it that the people that set up these 12-step programs just brought it to today, right? I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, but today, this is what I'm going to do, right? In this moment, this is what I'm going to do for this hour, until the next time I go to my next meeting. Just break it down into bite-sized pieces and watch how things will shift and change. And think about what I said. The other day, I went through, I think I shared this. I did a bonus episode on Monday. But, I sat down and reframed a bunch of things in my past. Bunch of things that have happened that were really, really knocked me off. And I was finding it hard to move forward. Just kind of stopped me in my tracks, which has never happened before. So I sat down and I wrote these things down and I reframed them. And I have felt so much better. I can't tell you. It was the way I was looking at it. It's just like what I say, you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. Well, the part you could change in yourself is the way you're thinking about things. And if you're thinking bad things, you need to think different things. And part of the reason is, who are you around? Who are you spending your time with? They say that we're a lump sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Well, who is that? You gotta think about what you're thinking about, what you're putting in your head, what you're reading, and guard your mind, right? Our minds are powerful things. They're like little computers. And if you put shit in, you're going to get shit out. So bring it all down to today. Live in the moment. And, try to let go. It says in there to let go. It's hard. Trust me. I mean, you could see that I have some big things going on in my life that my mind jetted off during a podcast. And it's going to do that. There's no perfection here, but I caught it and I came back. There's sometimes when I can read half a book and think, oh my God, what was that about? So, I've got to take more responsibility for what I'm thinking about. And I got to think about right now. Right now. That's it. What can I do right now? Okay. I love you all. I will see you next week. Drop me a note and tell me how you're doing.